Hi friends, Mindy here. I'm going to be setting up my journal to work through Delivered to the Saints from Bythewell4god. I'm going to be using this DIY mini book kit that they released this month. The last that I checked, there were still some of these available in the shop if you are interested in purchasing this. I'm going to go through the contents of this kit, also give you a couple of ideas for how you can use it, and then I will get into creating the journal the way that I have in my mind to do. And so there's a lot of opportunity here to really kind of customize this journal the way that you would want it to be. And so I'm just going to throw out a few ideas, and then hopefully that will give you some ideas and inspiration for how you want to do it. But let me just open this up. So what they have done this month is they came out with a piece of craft text that they have already prepared and printed on. So you have this beautiful cover. Craft text is usually like a white color, or you can get it in colors, but anyway, they take it and they prepare it, and then they print a beautiful image on the front of it. They've done this a couple of different times, and the images are always so beautiful on here. And so you end up with the craft text cover, and then there's also the pieces in here for the spine and the cover. So you have your chipboard pieces, the front and back cover, and the spine. You also have some end papers to work with here, and then you have 3 signatures that are already folded and everything prepared for you, cut down to size, that will fit in that cover perfectly. You also have some, looks like some wax linen thread, and even a bookbinding needle. You have some twine if you would prefer to do like a twine binding method. I've shown that on my channel before. And then you also have some seam binding. So if you want to create a closure, you can, add that to the edges here. Certainly you could coffee dye that, or use distress inks or whatever to colorize that however you would prefer. And then there's also some file folders this month, and so that are included in this kit. And these are beautiful, and they're double-sided. And so this is one of those things, I feel like this is neutral enough that even if you didn't want to use it for this particular kit, you could certainly use this for anything. The library theme is, it's always a good one. And but everything else is, the colors are just so neutral that I feel like you could do anything with it. And because there's so much in this kit, you really could probably even get 2 journals out of it, which is probably what I'm going to do. Because I know that when Lori was doing her live, her intention, and so I'll just show you that first, was that you could use these pieces of chipboard here, glue them directly to your craft text. Just make sure when you do that, that you're leaving enough space in between the spine piece and the cover pieces, about the same thickness as the chipboard. You want this to be able to bend. And so if you put it right up next to it, you're not going to have enough give there to make your cover actually bend. Everything is really cut perfectly, pretty close to what you need. And so the intention was that you glue these pieces down, and then you can come back through and just trim off these edges around here. For me, I'm not going to be doing it that way. They did also include some end papers so that this side of the chipboard won't be covered, would be covered and not be the raw, or you could use the papers that coordinated with the devotional kit. But it will still at this point leave the edges of this chipboard kind of exposed. And so I'm actually going to save these pieces for another project. I want to be able to kind of customize this signatures that I'm going to be putting in here. I know I've already read through the devotional once, and so I know that there's a lot of scripture references in there, and so I'm going to need to give myself a little bit more room. And so I'm going to actually make this into a soft cover journal. I will save those chipboard pieces and maybe create another journal using some of the pattern papers or some other fabric or whatever down the road. But for today, I'm just going to create a soft cover that I will sew my signatures into. So I'm going to put you on fast forward and get started with that process. The first thing that I'm going to do is kind of decide how I want my signatures to look. I'm going to want multiple signatures, and I'm going to add in some extra papers besides just the craft paper that is already included in here. I'm going to add some file folders, some of the pattern papers, and really bulk up these signatures signatures. I'll probably even maybe make another 4 or 5, you know, total signatures just to give me some space. But I'm going to do that first so that I know how big I need to work on creating kind of a spine so that I can sew these in. So that being said, I'm just going to put you on fast forward and get started. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is make myself another signature. So I'm pulling a couple of these pages out from the existing signatures, and I'm going to make myself 4. These each have 2 of those craft pages in them. I did take the 1 extra piece out and set it off to the side. I have pulled out some of the pattern paper that coordinates with this kit, and the ones that are really can be used kind of, you know, either direction, because I'm folding them. They're 6x8 papers, so I'm folding them in half. And I didn't want to use like the one with the keys where it would be sideways, if that makes sense. So obviously these are going to be a little bit taller than my journal. You can kind of see here. So I will trim those down. I think the journal pages are about 5 inches, something like that. And so I trimmed those down, and then I want to add some other papers into my signatures. So I'm pulling out some of my favorite mixed media paper, which is some Bristol Vellum Smooth paper, and I am trimming this down. So I'm trying to get the most out of the paper so I don't have as much waste. So these are like 9x11, I think, size. So I'm taking them and splitting them down the middle. So my pages are going to be 4.5 inches tall. So they're going to actually be a little bit smaller than those craft papers, which is totally fine. I like a variety of paper sizes. I like a variety of paper styles and different things. So I'm actually adding in some book paper here. You can see these. These actually have some Psalms on there. I think that these came from like a Psalter or something. They were in a subscription kit that I used to get. And so I did not actually pull these out, but they do have Psalms on them. I thought that would be fun to include in here as well. So I'm going to just trim these down using my ruler, because again, these are just a little bit larger than my actual signature, and I am fine with everything being sort of different sizes and different textures and things. That's kind of how I like my journals. So I'm going to go through here and make my signatures now, making sure that I have, you know, each of the papers in each signature, but also not in the same order. So I'm going to kind of mix up, you know, which papers are next to each other. And then I'm taking these signatures and kind of lining them up on my mat here to kind of see how big I think I'm going to need my spine to be. And I'm settling on 1.25 inches. I think this is going to be okay. So I have this signature just sort of lined up where it will come on the cover, giving myself about 1/8 of an inch at the edge there. And then marking off 1.25 inches with my ruler. And then I'm going to sort of create a spine out of this. This will just make it easier to have a good place to sew instead of having just a completely rounded spine. And I have created journals like this before where I did this, and the spine will hold up pretty well. This craft text is pretty sturdy material. So I marked that off. Now I'm just going to take my ruler, and I'm going to use a bone folder and go down the edge of my ruler several times and just try to score this as best as I can here. And then I'm going to do that on the other side as well. I'm doing this on the inside so that I don't kind of scratch the printing on the outside. And then I'm going to try to fold it here a little bit. I'm just starting this process, and then I'm going to use the edge of my ruler. This Tim Holtz ruler kind of has a rounded edge, and it makes doing this process really easy. So I'm just taking my bone folder and rubbing right up against the edge of that ruler, and that's going to give me a really nice crease. And then I'm going to use my bone folder and just make sure everything is creased really well. And then I'm going to do the back part of this as well. You can kind of see I run my finger along there first and then bring in my bone folder and just keep kind of working that gently. And then I fold it, make sure everything is lined up, and then go over that with a bone folder as well. And it will stay folded like, you know, this. It will keep that kind of spine shape. You can see it kind of rounds just a little bit, but it actually works out really well for this style of journal. And with this extra piece there, I'm actually going to create a little wraparound cover. So I created a template so that I know where to punch my holes. I have 4 signatures, and I am marking the edge of the top of the paper for like the craft paper this template is actually the exact size of the spine. And so I mark on there, you know, which area is the top, and then you can see it fits perfectly in there. Now I'm just going to go through here and punch my holes. I'm working on a self-healing mat right here. I do have usually a foam that I work on, which I have somehow misplaced since I went to the retreat. So I need to locate that. But I am just kind of punching through here again, just to make those holes a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to take that template and I'm going to fold along that first area for that signature. I work from the back to the front. I just find it to be easier. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your signatures in order. So I typically will go through and number them in the top right-hand corner, just in pencil really lightly. That way I know which is the top of my signature and where it should fall, because even though I'm using a template, you know, they're not exact where the holes are. And so you want the holes that you're punching in the signature to align with the holes that you punched in the cover. And so it's just the easiest way to kind of make sure that you're doing that. So I will make sure that this stays as signature 4, and then I'm going to move in down to signature 3. I just personally I fold it along those holes. It just makes it easier for me to get it kind of in the gutter of the signature here. And then I'm using my book cradle to punch these holes. It just helps this process. But if you don't have one, you could use an old book or something like that and get kind of the same effect. So the next thing I need to do is cut my thread for this. So I need 2.5 to 3 times the height of the spine for each of my signatures. So I'm going to cut 4 pieces of that waxed linen thread to size. And then I am going to use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch to sew my signatures in. Again, starting from that very last signature. I just find that it's easiest to do it this way because I can clip it to the cover when I'm working on the next signature, and it kind of stays out of my way. So starting from the middle hole to the outside, then I'm coming back in to the signature from the top hole, going all the way down to the bottom, and then back out to the outside. I'm fiddling with this one just a little bit because I didn't get it, one of the holes punched all the way. And then I'm going to go back into the middle. And I say this all the time, but when you're doing this, just make sure your needle doesn't split the threads that are already there when you're coming back in through that hole, because you will not be able to tighten down your thread. So you can see I'm being careful here because I actually did get my needle through that thread the first time. So once I'm sure that that's clear of that, then I can tie this off. You just want to make sure that both of your tails are they're on either side of that long piece that runs down the center of the signature there. That way it just secures everything. I'm just going to make sure everything is in place. I'm going to tighten it down and tie a double knot. One of the reasons why wax linen thread is really good for this kind of project is that when you tie that knot, it's not sticky, but it's kind of sticky. It will stay in place. And so you can see here how I've gotten all 4 of my signatures sewn in, and now I want to create a little wrap kind of cover closure for this. So I'm trying to gauge how I want this. I think that I'm going to put my hole about 1/2 inch in from the edge. And so I'm just measuring to get the middle of the craft text here. I'm using my crocodile. I'm just going to punch a hole. I'm using a bigger eyelet here for this so that I can get that seam binding to go through there. And then I'm just going to set that eyelet. And I'm using like an antique bronze kind of color. I just felt like that went really well. And I'm sorry, I'm off camera here a little bit. I remember what I'm doing. And then just setting that eyelet there. And then I have some seam binding that came in the kit that I'm going to use, but I want to round the corners here first. I just feel like this gives it a nice finished look. Of course, you could use book corners if you wanted to, but I really just liked the round edge of this on here. So I'm going to pull out that seam binding that came with the kit, and I am going to coffee dye mine. Again, you could use distress ink or whatever you want to do if you wanted a darker color. I just had some coffee from another project that was sitting on my desk, and so I just dunked the seam binding in there, and then I put it on this paper towel to kind of absorb some of the excess of that, and then I will hit that with my heat gun just to dry it because I'm impatient. But you could certainly let it sit. If you let it sit and dry kind of naturally, you get a little bit more like crinkly to it, if that's something that you're interested in. But for me, I'm just going to hit it with my heat tool, and it still gets crinkly, which is fun. I just like the texture of that. You can see me drying it there. And then I thought I may be able to kind of double this up and go around. But in the end, I want to be able to wrap it around more times than that. So what I'm going to do is just tie a knot. So I'm slipping that through there. I'm going to tie a knot in the seam binding, and then that will allow me to be able to wrap this around the journal a couple of times. And then as it expands, obviously that will get a little bit shorter. And then I wanted to add these cute glasses that came with my kit as well onto the front of there. I just think that's really fun. And so this is how it's going to look when it's closed. And then obviously as the journal fills up, that closure will kind of move over to the right a little bit. And this is how the inside looks with all of those different papers in there so far. So that's pretty much it for me for this setup video. So if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, bye.